We are on the bottom of Yud Aleph Amid Beis. Tanu Rabbanan. Ein ma'abrin es hashana b'shnei ra'avon. I hope that's where you're up to. Okay? We do not, says the Brisa, we do not make a leap year when there's a famine. The question is, why not? The answer is because you're extending the prohibition of Chadash one extra month. You're not allowed to eat the new winter grain until you bring the Korban HaOmer on the 16th of Nisan. By making an extra Adar, you're extending the year by a month, depriving people of the opportunity to have the new grain. There's a shortage on grain. That's not good. Rebbe Omer, so Tanya Rebbe Omer, so the Brisa now supports this idea from Rebbe saying as follows. There's a pasuk in the Torah, in the Nach, referring to the prophet Elisha. This is right after the episode of the Shunammite woman that Elisha gave her a son. Then shortly afterwards, the pasuk says, "V'ishba mibal shalisha, vayavelo isha elokim lechem bikurim, esrim lechem saorim v'charmel b'tziklono." That a man brought Elisha as a tithe to a holy man. He gave him 20 loaves of barley bread. Ve'ein lecha kala b'chol Eretz Yisrael levashel peroseh yoser mibal shalisha. The very first place in all of Eretz Yisrael where grain ripens is this place, Baal Shalisha. V'afal pichein lo bacher ela min echad. And nonetheless, if you look carefully at the verbiage of the psukim, it implies that only one kind of grain had ripened by that time. So this was clearly early on in the season. Now normally, when grain is early in the season, it's still Chadash because it's before the 16th of Nisan. But nonetheless, Shema Tomar Chitim, don't think it was wheat. Tamulomar Saorim, it was barley. Barley is the earlier harvest. So it's clearly early on in the season. Shema Tomar Lifnei HaOmer, and therefore, do you think that perhaps this was before the Omer and this bread was not consumable? Tamulomar Tein La'am V'yochelu Achar HaOmer Haya. No, what did Elisha do with these 20 loaves of bread? You know, those other guys in that other religion have a famous story about their prophet feeding thousands of people with one loaf of bread. But they did not originate that story. That story comes from the Navi Elisha. He took 20 loaves and was able to feed the masses at a time of famine, miraculously with this bread. So how was he allowed to do so if the Korban HaOmer had not yet been brought and this grain was Chadash? And therefore, you see that this was after the 16th of Nisan. So, Emor me'ata ru'uya haisa osa shana shatis aber, umnei pnei ma lo ibra Elisha, sheshnas batzores haisa v'hayu akol ratzin leves agranos. So really, this was pretty much early on. It was probably sometime in February or March when this happened, this story. And so really, the year should have been perhaps a leap year. Well, probably not February, but maybe March. And really, it should have been a leap year. But the reason why Elisha didn't do so was because it was a year of famine. So therefore, this is our proof. Tanu Rabbanan. Ein ma'abrin es hashana lifnei Rosh Hashanah, v'imibruha eina me'uberes, aval mipnei adachak ma'abrin osa achar Rosh Hashanah miyad. So the Brisa tells us that the beit-din may not convene to establish the coming year to be an Iber Shana, that we're going to add an extra Adar any time before Rosh Hashanah. But if they want to, and if the political situation demands that they do such, they can do it immediately after Rosh Hashanah. Now, normally, you wouldn't declare next month to be Adar Sheni unless you're holding an Adar Rishon. That would be the normative time to declare an Iber Yor. But there may be certain political conditions. Let's say the rabbis anticipate that because of religious persecution, we will not have the opportunity to convene in Adar, and therefore we better do it right away. So they can do it immediately after Rosh Hashanah. Why can they not do it before Rosh Hashanah? It's too far as far as time is concerned. If they declare it to be the Iber Yor before Rosh Hashanah, people will forget, and there'll be mass confusion. Okay, v'afal pichein ein ma'abrin ela adar. And even if they do it after Rosh Hashanah, realize that the only month that can be doubled is the month of Adar, which is the last month of the year. They can't double any other month. So is this really so, Aini, that you're not allowed to make an Ibriyor before Rosh Hashanah? Let me show you a story. V'hasholchu lei l'rabba, zug ba merekes, v'tafsu nesher, uviyadam devarim hanase beluz. They sent a cryptic message. It was written poetically or perhaps in code in order to avoid being caught by the authorities. They sent Rabbi the following message. There was a pair of Talmidei Chachamim who came from Reket, which is another name for Tiberia, Utefaso Nesher. They were intercepted by a Persian army. Uviyadim dvarim hanasim beluz. But in their hands they carried things, mitzvahs, that are made in the town of Luz. Umay nihu techelis. And what we mean by that is that in the town of Luz, it was traditional for the Luzites to manufacture techelis, the blue threads for the tzitzis. B'zuchus harachimim u'b'zchusam yatsu b'shalom. But nonetheless, even though they were intercepted, it was in the zuchus of the rachamim, perhaps of the techelis, and it was in the zuchus of these people themselves that they were able to escape without injury. Va'amusa yereche nachshon bikshu likvoa netziv echad v'lo hinichan adomi halaz. Furthermore, clearly this is a time of religious persecution. The Nasi, which is the code word for the Nasi, the president of the Jewish people, is Va'amusa Yereche Nachshon, which means the those who are the remnant of the descendants of Nachshon sought to establish an additional month of Adar, V'lo hinichan adomi halaz, but the Edomites, another code word for the Romans, did not allow him to do so. Avol bali asufos ne'esafu, v'kavulo nitziv echad b'yerach shemes bo Aaron HaKohen. But the Bali Asufos, which is a reference to the Sanhedrin, gathered and established an extra month. And when did they do this? In the month that Aaron the Kohen died. Now, when did Aaron the Kohen die? He died in Av, right? Chodesh Av. So the question that the Gemara is asking, okay, this was all sent in code to Rabbah, but the story itself indicates that the Ibriyor was made in Av, which is 2 months before Rosh Hashanah. So how could they do that? So the Gemara's answer is Chashuvei mechashvei geluye lo maglu. The answer is that the beit-din can convene to calculate whether the coming year will need to be an Ibriyor, but they cannot publicize it until after Rosh Hashanah. So now the Gemara has a side question. The word nitziv in this encoded message was used to describe an added month. My mashma dahai nitziv lishna de yarchahu. Where does the connection between the word nitziv, which either usually means a pillar or an officer, what does it have to do with a month? Dichziv, and the answer is because of the pasuk in Malachim. It says v'lishlomo shnei masar nitzivim al kol Yisrael v'chikalu es hamelech veis beiso chodesh pashana. That Shlomo had 12 ministers, and they were in charge of supplying the needs of the king and his people. Each minister, one person per month, because he had 12 ministers, so each minister took 1 month. So you see that the word nitziv, or minister, is associated with monthly duty, and that's why they used the code word nitziv for a month. So the Gemara asks, but how can you tell me that Shlomo had 12 ministers, v'haksiv u'nitziv echad, asher ba'aretz? In that very same chapter, it says that there was only one minister. So Rav Yehuda v'Rav Nachman chad omer echad memuna al kulam, v'chad omer keneged chodesh ha'ibor. So Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman have two ways of reconciling it. One says that there was one minister in charge of the other 12, and the other opinion is that the added minister was in addition to the 12, and he would take on duties when it was a leap year. So whenever there was a 13-month year, that was the added minister referenced by the pasuk. Tanu Rabbanan, ein ma'abrin es hashana lo mishana lechaverta, v'lo shalosh shanim zu achar zu. You cannot declare this year an Ibriyor if it's only to accommodate the agricultural and astronomical workings of the following year. In other words, it may very well be that it's beneficial to make this year an Iber so that next year everything will work out in alignment. But that's not the proper way to do it. You can only make an Iber if it's for the needs of the criteria of this year's crops or this year's equinox, not for the sake of next year. The second thing that the Brisa teaches us, that you cannot make 3 leap years in succession, in a row. Amar Rabbi Shimon Maisa b'Rabbi Akiva, shahayachavush b'veis ha'asurim, v'iber shalosh shanim zu achar zu. So Rabbi Shimon objects, and he says that I know of a story when Rabbi Akiva was in prison. The rabbis came to visit him. They convened the Sanhedrin right then and there, and they declared that the following 3 years were going to be Iber yours. So Amrulo mishamraya based in Yashva v'kavu echas bizmana. So they said, you're not bringing you're right that they established 3 years, but they were not 3 years in a row. They basically said they saw that Rabbi Akiva was about to be executed, and they wanted to involve him in future calculations for the next, let's say, X number of years, let's say 10 years or 20 years. And so they sat down and they calculated for that series of years which years should be leap years, and they set the calendar with Rabbi Akiva present. But it wasn't 3 years in succession, 3 years in a row. It was 3 years staggered over the course of X number of years. Tanu Rabbana, Ein ma'abrinas hashana lo b'shvias v'lo b'motzoi shvias. So the Brisa says that we should not establish the Shemitah year as a leap year. Why? Because you're basically extending all of the prohibitions of Shemitah by 1 month. And furthermore, we should also not make the 8th year, or the year after Shemitah, a leap year. And the reason for that, explains Rashi, is because the year after a Shemitah year, there's already a shortage on grains in the silo that are stored from the 6th year, because they've been mostly used up during the Shemitah year. So, and you can't yet use the grain that grows in the 8th year until you bring the Korban HaOmer. So you want to bring the Korban HaOmer as quickly as possible. Don't add an extra month. So Emosai Regilin La'aber, Erev Shavias. So what typically was the time of making an Iber Yor? The 6th year, the year before Shemitah, because that would give you an added month to work the agriculture and to cultivate it so that it would grow better. So Shalbeis Rabban Gamliel Hayu Ma'abrin b'Motzoi Shviz. However, Rabban Gamliel's beit-din did make a leap year on the 8th year. And why did they do that? So uviplugta dahani tanoi, because they argued fundamentally about the following: the Tanya ein mevi'in yerek mechutz la'aretz v'rabosenu hitiru. There's a machlokas whether you're allowed to import produce from chutz la'aretz into Eretz Yisrael. So if you hold you're not allowed to import, so then it would make sense that on the 8th year you should not make a leap year because there's a shortage of domestic grain. But if you're allowed to import produce from chutz la'aretz, so then there's nothing wrong in making a leap year, because if there's any shortage of domestic grain, you'll be able to use the imported produce. So my beinayu, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah choshishin legusheni ka beinayu. What's the basis of the machlokas whether you're allowed to? Why can't you import produce into Eretz Yisrael? The opinion that says you're not allowed to is because the rabbis made a decree that the earth of chutz la'aretz imparts tumah. So we don't want to bring tumah into Eretz Yisrael. So produce is not earth. What's the issue? The concern is that if you have a truckload of rutabagas coming in from Syria, right? So the problem is that maybe there's a clump of earth attached to the rutabagas, and that'll bring tumah into Eretz Yisrael. So the Chachamim say for that reason you across the board can't import produce. But Rabban Gamliel was not concerned about that. Tanu Rabbana. Ein ma'abrin es hashana mipnei hatuma, Reb Yehuda Omer ma'abrin. So this Brisa says that you're not allowed to declare an Iber Yor if the only reason for doing so is not because of the agriculture, but rather because of the Tumah status of the citizens of Eretz Yisrael. Now what this means, Rashi offers two explanations. One is, let's say the Nasi or some other very important dignitary is deathly ill, and we anticipate, this is already in the month of Adar, we anticipate that he doesn't have much time to live. He may live another 2 or 3 weeks. But if he dies, he may die like right before Pesach. Everyone will be engaged in his burial because you have to do that for the Nasi, and therefore everyone will be tameh when it comes time to bring the Korban Pesach. So let's therefore move Pesach a month so that we'll avoid that problem. Another explanation could be, is let's say we're holding at the end of Adar, and the majority of the Jewish people are tameh, and we don't have the ashes of the para aduma to purify them. And we're not going to get the ashes until a few weeks from now, because we can't find a red cow. So in that situation, there would also be an argument to be made, let's push off Pesach another month so that we can purify Klal Yisrael. But that, says the Tanakama, you do not do. And we'll explain this more carefully in a moment. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you do make an Ibriyor for the sake of Tumah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'isa b'Chizkiya Melech Yehuda, she'iber es hashana mipnei hatumah, u'bikesh rachmim al atzmo. And I can bring you a precedent that Chizkiya HaMelech once made an Ibriyor specifically because of Tumah concerns, and then he asked Hashem for forgiveness. Now, that last part, he then asked Hashem for forgiveness, doesn't make any sense. If you were bringing proof to Rabbi Yehuda Shita that it's the right thing to do, why then did Chizkiah have to ask for forgiveness? The Gemara is going to undertake that question momentarily. But where do we see this in the Psukim? Tichsiv ki marbis ha'am rabas me'Ephraim u'Menashe Yisachar Zvulun lo hitaharu. That it says that there was a majority of the people from different tribes who were not tahor. Ki achlu es ha'pesach below kakasuv ki hispalel Chizkiah aleim lemor Hashem atov yichaper ba'ad. And they therefore ate the Korban Pesach in a way that was not prescribed by the Torah. And the way that the Rabbi Yehuda is understanding that is that I incorrectly made an Ibriyor so that they would be able to purify themselves in order to eat the Korban Pesach. And I hope that Hashem will forgive me. That's what Chizkiah davened. So Chizkiah on the one hand made an Ibriyor, but he asked Hashem to forgive him for doing so. So Rabbi Shimon Oimer, im mipnei hatuma ibruha me'uberes. Rabbi Shimon says that if the Sanhedrin declared it me'uber for the sake of tuma, then b'di'evet it is me'uberes. Ela mipnei ma bikesh rachmim al atzmo. Well, then the question is, if it's valid, then what did Chizkiyahu have to ask for forgiveness for? She'ein ma'abrin ela adar v'hu iber nisan b'nisan. This is what Chizkiyahu was asking for forgiveness. He was asking Hashem to forgive him because normally, as we'll discuss momentarily, you can only make a leap Adar, a second Adar, if you're still within the month of Adar Rishon. If Adar Rishon has concluded, and now it's Rosh Chodesh, and they've already declared it to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you're not allowed to change your mind afterwards and say, no, we're going to change this to Adar Sheni. But Chizkiyahu did just that. After they had already made it Rosh Chodesh Nisan, he declared it to be, no, we're changing our minds, we're making it Adar Sheni. And that's what he did wrong, and that's why he was asking Hashem for forgiveness. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Misham Reb Shimon, Mipnei Shehesiyas Yisrael Lasos Pesach Sheni. And Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says that is totally the wrong interpretation of the story. The reason, what Chizkiyahu did not at all make that year an Ibriyor. The reason why he was asking for forgiveness is because he incorrectly told the people who were Tameh, wait until the following month, which is Pesach Sheni, the 14th of Iyar, to bring your Korban, because the law is, as the Torah says, that if a person is Tameh on Erev Pesach and he can't bring his Korban Pesach, he should bring what's called Pesach Sheni. As we'll see in a moment, Chizkiyahu was mistaken in instructing people to do that, because when the majority of the population is Tameh, they bring their Korban Pesach even in a state of Tum. So now let's unpack this entire bris. Amar Mar, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ma'abrin. Rabbi Yehuda says that if the majority of the people are tamei, that's a reason to make an ibryor to avoid people having to bring the korban pesach in a state of tumah. Alma islay la Rabbi Yehuda tumah duchuya hi b'tzibur. It seems like Rabbi Yehuda holds that tumah is only reluctantly suspended in a community when the community is tamei. Now this is a machlokes in Maseches Pesachim. Everyone agrees that if the community is tamei, the majority of the community is tamei, we bring the korban pesach on the 14th of Nisan, even in a state of tumah. But there's a machlokes of how we look at that process mechanically. In other words, do we say that tumah is hutra, that we view the tumah as having disappeared, there is no more prohibition of tumah, and therefore go right ahead, even though normally you're not allowed to bring a korban in a tamei state, now that law no longer applies? Or do we say that no, it's only with great reluctance we allow you, but there is still a violation of the laws of tumah, but it is overridden by the importance of bringing the korban pesach? So if you hold the former way, so then there would be no reason for Rabbi Yehuda to make an ibryor. There would have been no reason. He should have just said, it's okay, even though we're all tamei, nonetheless, we're justified completely. There's no longer any restrictions of tumah, and we're completely justified. There's no reason to make an ibryor. But the fact that Rabbi Yehuda felt that there was a need to make an ibryor means that he said that it's only with great reluctance that we allow people to bring a korban pesach with tumah, in a state of tumah. And if there's any other solution to work around that, you have to do that. That's why he made an ibryor. So, but the problem is that I'll show you a brisa now that shows that Rabbi Yehuda holds just the opposite. That tumah is completely removed, not that it's reluctantly still there. Because v'hatanya tzitz bein sheyesh al mitzcho bein shein al mitzcho miratza diver Rabbi Shimon. Here it's a related halacha, but we'll see how it's connected. The Torah says that the forehead plate of the Kohen Gadol, which says Kodesh Lashem, what is its function? It is to atone for any situation where tumah is introduced into the Beis HaMikdash. And Rabbi Shimon says that it makes no difference whether the tzitz is currently resting on the forehead of the Kohen Gadol or not. Even if it's in a drawer, it still atones for tumah. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Odo al mitzcho miratza, ein odo al mitzcho eino miratza. And Rabbi Yehuda says no. The tzitz only has that atoning power when it's resting on the Kohen Gadol's forehead, but if not, it does not atone. So Amar le Rabbi Shimon, Kohen Gadol b'yom HaKippurim yochiach, she'eino al mitzcho miratza. So Rabbi Shimon says, I'll prove to you that you're mistaken, because on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol is not wearing the tzitz. He doesn't wear the forehead plate. He only wears those white vestments. And yet, we see that the Torah makes an allowance for tumah to be atoned for on that day. So, Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda, Hanach li Yom HaKippurim, shetumah hutra b'tzibur. So Rabbi Yehuda said that Yom Kippur is an exception to the rule, because on that particular day, even though the Kohen Gadol is not wearing the tzitz, the prohibition of tumah is completely removed. And that's why you don't need the tzitz. So it's not the tzitz that is atoning for the tumah, but the law of tumah no longer applies. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda holds that whenever we suspend the laws of tumah, it's completely removed. Not with reluctance, but completely and entirely. So why then is it that Rabbi Yehuda, when he talks about the law of tumah, says that you should make an ibryor, because we don't want there to ever be a conflict between tumah and bringing the korban pesach. So the Gemara says, V'litai mech tik shilach higufa. Rabbi Yehuda omer ma'abrin, v'am Rabbi Yehuda ma'isa b'chizkiya melech Yehuda shibris hashana mipnei atumu b'ikesh rachmim al atzmo. So the Gemara says, let's ask a more fundamental question. There's an inherent contradiction within this brisa. Rabbi Yehuda says it is completely legitimate to make an ibryor if the majority of Klal Yisrael is tamei. And then he brings proof to that from the story of Chizkiah, but it says that Chizkiah made an error, and therefore he had to ask for forgiveness. According to you, Rabbi Yehuda, why did Chizkiah have to ask for forgiveness? Ela chitzuri mechzer v'hachi ketani. So the Gemara says, you're right. There's really a shtickle missing from this brisa, and you have to read it as follows. Ein ma'abrin es hashana mipnei hatuma v'im ibruha me'uberes. It's not that the Tanna Kama says that you can never make an Iber Shana because of Tumah. Lechatchila, you cannot make an Iber Shana, but b'di'evet, if you do it, it works. And then Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Eina Me'uberes. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, I hold that even b'di'evet, it's not Me'uber. In other words, if the consideration for making an Iber Yor is not for agricultural or astronomical purposes, but it's only because of the tumah that is present in the congregation, there's no justification at all to make an Iber Yor, and even b'di'evet it's not valid. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda v'chulei. And that's where Rabbi Yehuda brings the story of Chizkiah, that he made an Iber Yor incorrectly, and therefore he had to ask Hashem for forgiveness because he basically set Pesach on the wrong day. So the Gemara says, now wait a minute. You're telling me that the Tanna Kama of this brisa is now saying that b'di'evet, if they made it an Iber Yor, it's good. Isn't that exactly what Reb Shimon in the brisa said? So now we have three opinions, but opinion 1 and opinion 3 are exactly identical. What's the difference between Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim? So Amar Rava lechatchila ika beinayu. The answer is that the first opinion of the brisa is that lechatchila you may not make an Iber Yor for purely Tumah considerations. The second opinion is Rabbi Yehuda says even if you did so, but if you did so, says the first opinion, b'di'evet it's kosher. Rabbi Yehuda says, I hold that no, even b'di'evet it's not kosher. And the third opinion of Reb Shimon is even lechatchila, if there's Tumah considerations, you're allowed to make an Iber Yor. And Tanya Nami Hachid, I'll show you a brisa that says that explicitly, that that's the difference between the Chachamim and Rabbi Shimon. Ein ma'abrin es hashana mipnei hatumah lechatchila, and Rabbi Shimon oimer ma'abrin, that lechatchila says the Tanna Kama, you may not make an Iber Yor, and Rabbi Shimon says no, even lechatchila you can do it. Ela mipnei ma bikesh rachmim al atzmo, she'ein ma'abrin ela adar v'hu iber nisan b'nisan. So the question on both of these rabbis is, if legally it's okay, why then did Chizkiah have to ask for forgiveness? And the answer is not because you're not allowed to make an Iber Yor, but he made it mechanically. The mechanics of how he did it was wrong. He waited until after Rosh Chodesh Nisan to make an Iber Yor, and that was what was wrong. Omar Mar, she'ein ma'abrin ela adar v'hu iber nisan b'nisan. So let's go over that last point. You're telling me that what Chizkiah did wrong is that he waited until after Rosh Chodesh Nisan and decided to change it to Adar Sheni. The Gemara's question is, V'lesle l'Chizkiah hachodesh hazeh lachem ze Nisan ve'ein acher Nisan? How could Chizkiah make such a fundamental error? There's a pasuk in the Torah that says, hachodesh hazeh lachem. This month is for you as the first month of Nisan. And that word hazeh implies that once you've made this month Nisan, you cannot switch it to another month. And that's a biblical law. How could Chizkiah have erred in such a blatant, explicit biblical law? So the Gemara answers, Ta'a b'dishmul. You're right. His mistake was much more subtle in nature. The Amar Shmuel, Ein ma'abrin es hashana b'yom shloshim shel Adar, hol v'roi l'kovo Nisan. V'ihu savar, hol v'roi lo amrina. The mistake was as follows. They had not yet declared it to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan, but it was day 30 of Adar Rishon, the day when typically they would declare it to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Shmuel is of the opinion that because theoretically this could be Rosh Chodesh Nisan, even though they haven't yet declared it to be Rosh Chodesh, you may not use this day as a declaration of Adar Sheni. It's already too late. Since in theory you could make this could be Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it's now already too late to declare it to declare a second month of Adar. And that was Chizkiah's mistake. He took the 30th day of Adar, and said, okay, today's Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni. So Tanya Nami Hachi, in the brisa that we have that supports this idea is, Ein ma'abrin es hashana b'yom shloshim shel Adar, hoil v'roi l'kovo nisan. The brisa says this, that you're not allowed to make a leap year by adding an Adar Sheni on the 30th day of Adar, since in theory it could be already Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Now, Reb Shimon ben Yehuda Omer Mishum Reb Shimon B'nei She'esi Es Yisrael Lasos Pesach Shein. The last part of the brisa says that according to Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, Chizkiah's mistake was not that he made a leap year, but rather that he instructed all who were tamei to go ahead and wait until Pesach Sheni to bring their carbon Pesach. So heichidami. So here again, what was the real case? There must have been something subtle that Chizkiyahu missed. If the true majority of the people were tamei, then he should have known that that's not a reason to deflect people to Pesach Sheni. So what was really going on? So Amar Rav Ashi kagon shaho Yisrael mechza tamei mechza tahorim v'nashim ashlimos l'tahorim va'otfos aleim. Here's what really was going on. There was a very slim majority of males who were tamei, but there was a very large majority of females who were tahor. And if you would have taken a census of all the people, male and female, you would have come out with a majority of people who were tahor. But if you just took a census of only the males, you would have come out with a slim majority of people who were tamei. Now we know when there was a majority of people who were tamei, you bring the carbon pesach despite the tumah. So meikara savar nashim barishon chova tahavu miyutan tememu miyutan mitchula pesach sheni. Lobasav savar nashim barishon rishus tahavalu temem ruba v'ruba lo mitchula pesach sheni. Chizkiya's mistake was that initially he was of the opinion that women have the same level of obligation of carbon pesach as men. And therefore, when you take a census of the entire population, male and female, and you discover that there's a majority of people who are tahor, then the minority who are tamei are individuals who are deflected to Pesach Sheni. That's why he told them to wait until Pesach Sheni. But then he realized, after studying the halacha more carefully, that women's level of obligation is only voluntary when compared to the males. And therefore they are not counted in the census of is there a majority of tamei versus a minority of tamei. You only count the males, you don't count the females. And therefore he realized that he made a mistake because only counting the males would have given a majority of people who were tamei. And therefore he was wrong to have deflected them to Pesach Sheni. Gufa. Omar Shmuel, Ein ma'abrinas hashana b'yom shloshim shel Adar, hol v'roi lekovo nisan. So let's go back to this halacha, that if you wait until the 30th of Adar, it's already too late to make the new month Adar Sheni. So Ibru Hamai, what happens if B'di'eved, they want to go ahead and they declare it to be Rosh Chodesh, and they say it's Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni. So Amar Ula Ein Makachin Es HaChodesh. So Ula says, well listen, in a B'di'eved situation, it's already the 30th of Adar, and you realize that really we need to make this new month in Adar Sheni, not Nisan. What you should do is say nothing. In other words, don't say Mekudash, Mekudash. Because if you say Mekudash, Mekudash, even though afterwards you say Adar Sheni, it's automatically Nisan. Because of the fact that in theory, since this is day 30 already, it's already entered into the realm of Nisan. So therefore, say nothing. And then after Rosh Chodesh elapses, tell people we're in Adar Sheni now. And then for the next month, say Mekudash, Mekudash, Chodesh Nisan. What?
What do you say in davening?
That's a good question. The Gemara is not getting into that now. So, Kid Shumai. So now the question is, okay, what if the beit-din did not abide by that law? And what if they said Mekudash, Mekudash, Adar Sheni? What will be the law? Is this Adar Sheni, or is it too late and it's Nisan? So Amar Rava Batel Ha'ib. Rava says, no, it's Nisan. Too late, sorry. Once you said Mekudash, Mekudash, even though immediately afterwards you said Adar Sheni, doesn't work. So Rav Nachman Amar Ma'ubar Umekudash. And Rav Nachman says, I disagree. Since they said Mekudash, Mekudash, Adar Sheni, it is an Adar Sheni b'di'evid even on day 30. So Amalei Rav Nachman Mechdei. Mipurya lepischa tlasin yomin havu, umipurya darshinan beilchas haPesach. The Tanya Sholem beilchas haPesach kodem lePesach shloshim yom. Rav Shimon Gamliel omer shtei shabbosos. So Rava challenges Rav Nachman. He says, "You're telling me that b'di'evet even on day 30 they could turn it into Adar Sheni." My problem is with it is as follows: when do we start studying the laws of Pesach? We start. It's a machlokas between the rabbis and Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, as to whether you start 30 days before or 2 weeks before. We paskin like the Chachamim, we start 30 days before, which means that you start studying the laws of Pesach already on Purim, right? We know that because It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch that you're supposed to start studying the laws of Pesach on Purim itself. So the problem that I have with this is v'chimati reish yarcha mirachakin lei asli lezilzulei b'chametz. He says people have already now been studying the laws of Pesach for 2 weeks. When by the time the 30th of Adar rolls around, you're suggesting that even at this late date we can tell people that it's Adar Sheni. The people are not going to listen to these representatives who are telling them that it's Adar Sheni. They're going to say, how can you possibly say that? We've been learning Hilchas Pesach already for 2 weeks. Clearly Pesach is coming up in just a few days. No one's going to believe them. So, Amar Lei, Meida Yadi, Deshasa Ma'abarta B'chushban Atalia Milsa, Amri Chushban Hu Delo Salek Luhula Rabbanan Ad Hashta. So Rav Nachman says, that's not so. Everyone knows, even the common folk understand, that the way that the Sanhedrin comes to the conclusion that they have to make a year a leap year is through careful calculation, careful deliberation, careful examination of the agriculture, careful examination of the astronomical configurations of the equinox and so forth. So it's not such an easy calculation to make. People will be understanding if the representatives of beit-din tell them the Sanhedrin has been deliberating, but they were not able to come to resolution until now, until this last date. It's not shocking, it's not surprising, and people will accept that. So even though they've been learning the laws of Pesach for the 2 weeks since Purim, even if on day 30 would tell them that today's Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni and not Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they will accept that. And this is where we'll hold it for today. Wishing you all a good Erev Shabbos.